Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Iza and I will be your host for today's webinar. Before we start, do fill up the form in the QR code on your screen or visit the link in the description box below to check in. This is so that we can send you additional materials and send you invitations for our future webinars later on. Now, let's get started. Welcome. Thank you for attending our fifth webinar in our Business Continuity Digitalisation, or for short, BCD series. We have recently officiated our BCD initiative with our strategic partner, MDEC 100 Go Digital. Through our first webinar, the BCD program is aimed at helping small and medium enterprises, SMEs, mitigate the impact of COVID-19 by leveraging digital opportunities. This BCD webinar series is jointly hosted by our very own DGX and our digital solutions altHR and Omni Hotline. Just a quick introduction to DGX. DGX is Digi's venture builder arm. Our focus is to help Malaysian companies of all sizes problem solve by digitalizing their operations through our solutions altHR, Omni Hotline, and iFleet. Today, we feature special guests from The Jungle People and Digi Telecommunications, where they will respectively be sharing more about accelerated learning, as well as taking your burning questions about the topic during our Q&A session. Okay, so we have a great lineup of speakers today. To start, we have Rafe Majid, who is the Head of Talent, Learning and Rewards at Digi Telecommunications. And we also have Emily Chin, who is the Head of Business Unit, Trainer and Consultant from The Jungle People. Okay, hi. So we will begin today's webinar with a presentation from Rafe, who will be sharing about Digi's learning and development journey. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the live chat and we will do our best to address them during our Q&A session later on. Okay, in Rafe's current role as Head of Talent, Learning and Rewards at Digi, he is leading a team of experts and is responsible for the design and delivery of people solutions in the domains of talent management, culture, engagement, learning and development, rewards, people strategy, and policies. So without further ado, over to you, Rafe.
Thanks a lot for the introduction, Isa, and thank you, DGX, for presenting this opportunity. So today I'm going to be talking with all of you about Digi's journey on learning and development and how we've scaled it over the last few years. So with that, if we could just move into the slides. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so I think on the topic of learning and development, first and foremost, we need to talk about the macro environment of things, how the world is changing, how the workforce is changing, how organizations are changing, how businesses are changing and transforming. And we've all heard about it. We've all heard about IR 4.0, what all of that entails. I won't go into the details of it, but there is a common understanding and no doubt about the fact that things are changing at an exponential pace these days. And technology has a tendency to disrupt everything at an exponential pace. Just talking about DG, right? Being in the telecommunications space, how telco was run 20 years ago was very different. And how it's done today, how communications are done today is very different. And just in the space of 20 years, things have evolved really quickly. And it's really surprising. And a lot of these changes have been radical. So just building on that, even if you look at the last 5 years, it's the transformation has been monumental, and we all need to adapt to that. And behind all of this, understanding how businesses change in order to enable all of that, while fine, you need some financial muscle, you need technological advancements, but to enable all of that, the key resource behind it is the people. And with all of that change and that pace of change, people also need to adapt at the same pace. And this setup now is very different from how it was a few decades ago. And that's what brings me to the importance of why it's important for organizations to have a future-ready workforce. It's the ability for organizations to see in the future, to look into the future, and see what the business will look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and understand what is needed today, what will be needed in the future. And the gap is then what we need to build on as an organization and as also part of the workforce. And then as individuals, we also need to keep up with all of that. While our organizations provide us a lot of opportunity on this, we also have a role to play on how we upskill ourselves along the way, not just through the tools and services provided by our organizations, but also in our personal time. So this is something which is it's here. It's here to stay. And for everyone who's tuning into the live stream, in our lifetimes, we will have to transform ourselves a few times as well. We cannot stick to the skills that we have today and expect those to be relevant 50 years from now when we're approaching our retirement or something. So this is where it all starts, understanding the macro environment and what's relevant for organizations in the future. So now if we move on to the next slide, this is where I talk about how DG adapted to this as an organization. So at DG, we were able to see this coming. We were, even before 5 years ago, of course, there were incremental improvements, but our learning transformation really started around 5 years ago, sometime towards the end of 2015, start of 2016. That's where we had realized that from a learning perspective and how we manage our workforce, it's going to take something very different from how we've done it in the past. Um, Learning opportunities, training sessions, nominations, learning calendars, all of that had to change. And that's where we came up with the philosophy of freedom to learn, which goes well with our employer brand as well. And what it essentially meant was that every citizen, every employee will have the freedom to take up any learning whenever they want, whatever they want. And that's something which we've stuck to. But that was the starting point. Subscribing to that philosophy, ingraining that philosophy in the organization. So that's where it had to all start. And then, of course, when you move into something like that, you have to move away from conventional means of how you upskill your workforce, and that's where we started exploring online learning as a solution to scale this in the organization, to make learning more relevant for a larger part of the organization, and to include a larger part of the workforce in this journey with DG. So 2016 and 17 was a lot about that. And what we saw was your early adopters, your eager learners, what we call as our super learners, who really took this opportunity and made the most out of it. Moving into 2018 and 19, the next 2 years we really spent on scaling online learning. And don't get me wrong, classroom training didn't go away. That stays. That's something which is still has its importance. It's just when it comes to scaling learning, we had to explore online and digital means. So this was when we were working with a lot of partners. DG is part of TalentCorp Group, so we partnered with TalentCorp Group on a lot of things on how we can expand our content and make it even more relevant and provide more options to our workforce. And a lot of time was spent behind that. We also introduced the 40-hour challenge, which I'll talk a bit more on the next slide. And then 2018-19 was also a lot about finding that sweet spot in blended learning formats, which is essentially a combination of online learning, classroom learning, and then actual application of those skills. And we really scaled that. We found common themes which would be relevant for the entire organization on critical skills such as personalized marketing, advanced analytics, cybersecurity, skills that are very important in our business and also gaining a lot of importance globally. And then also some softer and leadership traits such as working agile, such as design thinking and the concept of failing fast, learning fast. So these are concepts which we really ingrained, and we utilized blended learning formats to really make it happen and to scale it for the most part of the organization. So that was all in 2018-19. A lot of progress that we've seen during these 2 years. Online learning during these 2 years has become a lot more accepted. The first 2 years, of course, it took us a little bit of a time to ramp up. But as things are now, it's something which is known. Everyone understands. It's there. It has to be linked with that development, and it's something which is mainstream. And this year, 2020, I mean, first of all, with MCO and this entire pandemic, of course, we have had to do a lot of things very differently, and we have been doing a lot of programs which we would have traditionally done in a classroom format. We moved those to online format. So that's one thing. But the theme really this year and beyond will be on increasing relevance and personalization, really trying to see how this entire people value chain of learning and development, talent management, performance management, how all of that comes together, and how employees are able to see all of that as an integrated employee journey. So that's going to be one main theme. And then we're also experimenting a lot in exploring tools which can enable us to do it even better than we do it today. And that then touches upon the user experience part of things. How can we, for instance, push personalized recommendations to employees based on their self-assessment or their manager's assessment of what their development needs are, for instance. So these are things which we're working on, and we hope to streamline it a lot more. So it's been a journey so far, and I don't see an end to this journey. Just like how I was mentioning that technology will continue to evolve and disrupt how we do things. In the people space also, there is no final destination. It's just about constant evolution, and I see that ongoing beyond 2020 for a long time. So this is a bit about how DG has been approaching this over the last 5 years. A lot of progress that we've seen, a lot of ground that we've gained on this, and it's something which we've seen direct benefits on for the organization in terms of the contributions that employees are able to make, and in terms of also helping employees realize their own development needs and grow together with DG. So that's something which has worked out really well for us. On the next slide now, I'm going to touch upon a little bit on the 40-hour challenge that we had introduced. So this is just a campaign that fits in that entire journey. It's something that we've been running since 2018, and we're in the third year now with this. And what this campaign really was, the essence of it was really just a challenge to all Digizens to take out a week in a year, that's 40 hours, and take out a week for deliberate self-development. So taking that time out for yourself to learn, to upskill, to reskill, to pick up new things, and then contribute back to the organization using that. And we've seen many fantastic success stories through that. We've had people who have come in as interns in very operational roles, taken up the opportunity through the 40-hour challenge and through the content that we provide, through the opportunities we provide, through the platforms we provide, learned how to code, automated things, and then moved on to very different roles. That's a classic example of reskilling, and we have many employees doing that. And then on the other end, we have employees who are upskilling themselves. There's something that they do, and they're constantly getting better at it by making the most out of the opportunities that the 40-hour challenge provides. So this challenge in the form of a campaign has been monumental, I would say, in terms of helping this transition, this transformation of learning from conventional ways to more online blended, and also allowing employees to take ownership of their own learning and development in their own hands and making most of the opportunities that the organization provides to them. So this has worked really well for us. And it has also helped us make things slightly competitive in a fun way. So employees competing with each other on how they're doing on this challenge, teams competing with each other, departments competing with each other. And another key element here has been that this has been applied across the organization. So everyone from the CEO to the frontliner is driven by the 40-hour challenge, and it is part of their personal development plans. So that's something which has been really good to see, and it has really provided a lot of momentum on our learning transformation throughout this time. Of course, all supported by all the tools that we provided, all the opportunities that we provided to employees. But in the end, in order to have a transformation on the learning front as an organization for the entire workforce, it takes a bit more than just a learning roadmap. It is a bit of a culture and a mindset change, and that's where the 40-hour challenge really has helped. So with that, moving on to the next slide, and then just trying to piece together all these key takeaways that we have from DG's learning transformation, and just trying to put it in perspective. So as I mentioned, building a learning organization is more than just a learning roadmap. It's more than just a plan. It is a culture and a mindset change, and it takes a lot of effort and also a lot of time. But if everything is done correctly, you start seeing gains right away, and then you see that you can constantly improve as an organization. So a few things that are important here, right? Making it known. So this is all about that when it comes to learning, it's important to make it known to the organization, to make it known to everyone that this is something which all of us need to take seriously, something which all of us need to subscribe to, It's something essential for the company's future, and it's something essential for our own personal development. And this requires a lot of leadership commitment. Employees have to see it at the top on how the leadership is driving it, and it takes a lot of awareness as well. Because when we put the onus of learning in the employees' hands, they also then need to be enabled with understanding what opportunities are available, and that has a lot to do with building awareness in the organization. So DG has done it very structurally over the last 5 years, with the 40-hour challenge playing a very key role. But then again, DG is also a very large organization with 300 plus employees right now and 2,000 plus at 5 years ago. For SMEs, this is something which can be a much more accelerated journey, because things can be done a lot more efficiently, a lot more quickly when you're working in a smaller organization. So that's one. Then secondly, you have to make it easy for employees. Um, Learning content needs to be easily accessible, and that's something which is only possible if you venture into the online learning space. So as I mentioned, classroom learning remains important. Some things are meant for classrooms, but online learning is where accessibility really comes into play. The ability to just log into my phone, log into an app, and then just do the 30-minute quick course on a weekend in my free time is really powerful, and that really helps employees take up learning in a more sustainable manner. And then of course, making the experience as delightful as possible, as user friendly as possible. So working on the user experience is very important, and a key element of that is making sure that we have learning formats which work for everyone. So it could be classroom sessions, it could be 4-day virtual online programs, but then it also needs to be bite-sized learning, 20-minute snippets of things that they can pick up, breaking down a week-long course into maybe a 2-month-long learning path. So those kind of things we need to experiment with and provide options so that employees can do based on whatever works best for them. Making it relevant, extremely important as well. Personalization comes a lot into play. So in order for employees to see value in this, it has to be relevant to their own personal needs and also to the organization's needs, and that's something which has to be done in the end. So at DG, as I mentioned, it's something that we're focusing on now over the last 2 years. The initial momentum building was a little bit more done in a generic way, but this is where we have to go through, and then also making sure that the quality of the content is there, so that whatever time that is spent here, it all adds up in the end, and then making it matter. Um, if employees are learning things but they don't see it leading to anything, if they're not being given the opportunities to apply that learning in their jobs, in their personal lives, if they're not being asked about it, if they're not being encouraged by their managers, by the organization to learn more, then it all tends to fall apart. So it's extremely important for anything that organizations do to make a difference in the lives of employees and for the organization as well. Otherwise, there's no point. We're not doing learning just for the sake of learning. The spirit behind it is so that we can stay up to speed with the advancements in this accelerated world as we're talking about. So it has to matter for employees and for organizations, and that can be done in many ways. It's not just about taking up a course or a classroom session on online learning. It has to be about learning also on the job, learning through experiences, and learning also in our personal lives. So all of this has to come together for it to work, and a lot of opportunities in this for SMEs, especially because with the smaller sized organization, it's a lot easy to implement all of these things. It's a lot easy to rally employees, and from the employees' perspective, there's a lot of more opportunity to apply this as well. In many cases, you will be double hatting, triple hatting. There'll be many roles to play, many opportunities in the organization, in the SME, to make a difference by learning just something new, and then bringing it into the organization. So, all in all of these things have to work together for a learning culture to come together really well, and then to start making a difference for employees and for organizations. So, so with that, I shall end this. So, this has been an overall a really good journey. for DG. I hope that this sharing has been useful for all of you, and I look forward to the Q&A.
Thank you, Rafi, for the presentation. DG's learning and development journey is very inspiring indeed. So now moving on to our next speaker. Emily is the head of business unit, consultant, and trainer at The Jungle People. Emily's role in The Jungle People is ensuring her team designs and delivers relevant and suitable solutions for The Jungle People's clients around the region and also countries such as Vietnam, Singapore, and Indonesia. Over to you, Emily.
Thanks, Iza. Hello, everybody. So thank you so much for the invite as well as joining us during your lunch break. I just can imagine you guys having your nasi campur or kai fan in front of your laptop right now. But we're going to be talking about accelerated learning. And if you know the Jungle People, you will know that learning is really the bread and butter of the organization. Or if you're doing keto, then I would suppose it's avocado and egg. In the Jungle People, what we're doing is we do learning with our clients over 20 years in the area of team, leaders, as well as organizations. So I'm just going to show you the slides for this. And in terms of teams now, it's really interesting because even in the MCO times, we found that there were requests coming from our clients to focus on the area of building teams as well. Now, you might find that it's a little bit strange, but actually it's important because teams drive results. The second thing that we're also working on right now with our clients is building leadership competencies. And I think that's something that is really, really critical right now in the areas of coaching, mentoring, as well as for organizations who are looking to transform their culture, etc., etc. I'm not sure if you guys can see my screen, but right now we have a webinar for you that is usually 1 hour, but we're gonna condense it into a very short and snappy session, and basically cover two main objectives. Okay, number one, I assume that if you are here, you are somebody who wants to learn, and therefore for learners, we say, can we find ways where we can accelerate our learning? Okay, so that's the first objective. Now, the second objective is how then can we also, if you're a business owner, if you're a head of a department, and you want to be able to scale learning, not just for individuals, but also to help encourage the entire organization to have a learning mentality. Okay, we are gonna be doing this. I will try to make this as interactive as possible. In the next slide, we're gonna be sharing with you about the future of work. Now, Rafe has told us a little bit about how the future of work is changing, and here are a little bit more of statistics that will show you how learning is actually non-negotiable these days. It's not a matter of choice even. Here's what's happening right now. Organizations say they have to redesign work, they have to reskill the workforce, and up to 90% of organizations are actually redesigning jobs. This is statistics and data that Deloitte did, and this was in 2019 before we found ourselves in this global pandemic. And even then, this is already what's happening. And therefore, if I have to convince you that learning is critical and non-negotiable, this should do it. What's also interesting is, and I'm making an assumption here, how Digi is doing the 40-day challenge. This is what is cool or in or necessary these days. It's no longer something like our university days, actually my university days, when you would finish school and then you would start work. Right now, it's an integration of it, and people are calling it dev work right now. So development work, dev work. They basically Brangelina it. Also, the reason why we're saying that learning has to be accelerated is because of AI. We've got robotic process automations, etc., etc. And therefore, we find ourselves in a situation right now in the corporate environment where skills have to change drastically. And in 2018 in Davos, the world's global leaders, most brilliant minds came together and said, okay, year 2022, here are the skills that are going to be necessary for the future. And if you look at it, they're really more of the, what they call in the past, softer side. But what we in the jungle people say is the more essential skills. You have to have emotional intelligence, leadership, being able to solve complex problems. And here's the interesting thing. They say there's going to be up to 42% shift in the workplace. Now, what are we going to do? So if this is the scenario, we know that the world is changing fast, and we also have so much data that tells us that this is the direction that we're headed to. A few things that we can do. Number one, we can adapt with these changes. And I think the most kind of obvious thing that we're doing is, instead of only doing a face-to-face or classroom training, we have pivoted and we've done online learning programs. And this is the more straightforward ones. Even in the jungle people, we have adapted with these changes because our internal content team used to be in the back end many years ago. Right now, they're front end. They're delivering content for our clients to put on their LMSs, etc., etc. And it's now income generating as well. Second option that you can do is to learn new fields. You might have seen this Singaporean Getai performer, Wang Lei, and how he transitioned from being a stage performer to selling fish online. So these are new fields that people will have to find themselves going towards. Also, you can adopt new areas of expertise. Maybe in the past you had a brick and mortar shop, but right now you have to go into e-commerce and learn how to do a business via online social media, things that are also very important. Or you might just want to stay where you are and then become irrelevant. Some people are choosing this method. They are choosing to shelter in and hope that this will just, pass, and we will come out at the end of the other end of the tunnel safe. But I suppose the fourth option is not really one that a proactive person would want to use. If you look at these 4 different options, and I suppose there are many, many more, but I suppose there is good news because 3 are more proactive, whereas 1 is more of the kind of a doom and gloom one. So right now, our clients are also getting us to deliver programs that are in the areas of growth mindset, because adapting to changes, learning new fields, and getting new expertise is all critical. If you have a growth mindset, it's going to help you to adjust a lot better. So this brings us to now, 21st century learning. What is this? What is this 21st century learning? Actually, with the internet, everything that you need is in your hands. You can literally get the information of the entire mankind's history by just typing and in the search bar. So is it true that you can learn anything? Now, I just want to get a quick sense of what you guys think about this. We have information about everything right now, right? But it might not actually be learning, because how many of you have given back something to your teachers? So when you were in primary school, secondary school, or university, I just want to get you guys to type in the comments, what have you given back to your teachers? Is there anything that you have kind of given back to them? So for me, I have given back violin. I used to learn violin, but I don't know how to do it anymore. I learned it, I gave it back. Iza, is there anything that you have learned but given back to your teacher?
I actually have. So in secondary school, we had to go through this class called Kemahiran Hidup, or in English, life skills. So we had to do a lot of woodwork, and we had to build things from scratch. So during Teachers' Day, I always noticed that teacher who taught me also had a lot of pens and pencils lying around on her table. So for Teachers' Day, my friends and I were like, you know what, let's build her something based on what she taught us and give her like a pencil holder. So we built one from scratch, painted it a very nice pink color. And on Teachers' Day, we gave it to her, and she was very touched because she taught us how to do that, and we gave it back to her, and she was very happy. So that's one of the things that I've learned. But
Right.
let's look at.
So
The common
Isa, you're quite interesting because you actually gave back a tangible thing. I was also curious about, is there anything that kind of knowledge-wise that you have given back to your teacher, aka forgotten? So what do the comments say, Isa?
Okay, sure. All right. Wow, there's one that says belanja makan. Does it count? Okay, not really. But yeah, okay. Let's see. Biology, Chinese calligraphy. Wow. Okay, that's awesome.
Okay, yes. So now the reason why I've kind of wanted to get your insight about what kind of knowledge you have given back to your teacher is because learning doesn't really happen, and this is our opinion, learning doesn't really happen until you are creating value. So for 21st century learning, what we say and what we believe in is that learning things like I see in the chat, biology, maths, all this mitochondria and stuff, you don't really learn it unless it's created value for you. And this brings me to now what learning should be. Okay, so how we've done this is we've broken this down into 3 different areas, and I'm just gonna very quickly take you through it. Okay, now the first thing about learning that you should do is that you have to set functional goals. I think the key word here is functional, that you must be able to do something with this goal. Okay, now the second area is the one that we most usually think about, which is acquiring of the knowledge. So reading, Googling, watching masterclass, TED Talks, all of those things are acquiring of the knowledge. And that is what we usually think of as learning by itself. However, we're saying that there is 3 things that are necessary in this, not just acquiring the knowledge. You must first set the functional goals and then be deliberate in your practice. I think Rafe in his presentation also shared this about being very deliberate, and that's also something that we truly believe in. Now, remember I told you about how I already gave back my violin knowledge back to my violin teacher. So I gave it back to him. And the reason is because I only acquired the knowledge. At least I think I did. So for 5 years, I acquired the knowledge. I went through weekly classes, I took the exams, I passed the exams, but I did not set functional goals, right? So what we're also trying to share here is that while these are the 3 things that are necessary, we have to make sure that the missing ingredient cannot be forgotten, that you have to realize what this skill will allow you to do, functional goals. So what happens after this? So for example, I learned violin because, I don't know, my mom made me do it. Is that a functional goal? No, not really. I learned violin because, science says that it makes your brains make better connections. You are a better reader. You generally be able to think more logically or use both sides of your brains. Is that functional? It's better, but it's not really functional yet. Now, what we used to do traditionally is that when there are no clear goals about how you're going to use the skill, it's not going to help you to learn fast. Also, if the goals are not relevant and if the goals are not matched to your current competency, you find yourself, feeling dejected, not really motivated, and you go like, meh, I don't really want to do this anymore. What should be the case is this. Make sure that you define what you will be able to do. Find ways where you can immediately apply it, and then make sure that it's smart. So everybody in the corporate world, we all understand SMART goals, meaning that it cannot be airy-fairy, you have to be specific, make it time-bound, all of those things. Now, this was obviously something that I did not do when I learned violin when I was younger, right? So I should have done this. And I would like to publicly apologize to my violin teacher in Klang, Mr. Yang, 2 years ago, because you might have found yourself, knocking on my door and found that the curtains were closed and there was zero movement. Yeah, this was something that I should have done. Now, I'll give you an example that is more corporate. Our best-selling or most popular or most effective courses in the Jungle People right now is teaching managers how to coach for performance. Now, we're saying that coaching is necessary and this is a skill that we must have, not because it's cool or because the organization says you must, but make sure that we define what coaching will be able to do. So for example, I want to be a coach so that I can help my 2 subordinates close their gaps in their sales competencies. That's something that's a little bit more tangible, a little bit more functional. Not something like, I want to learn coaching because then I can add it into my LinkedIn profile. That's not a functional goal. Now, also, what we do with our coaching courses is we make sure that it is immediately applicable. After a 2-day session, you don't wait and say, okay, 3 months down the road, I'm going to start coaching. Nope, it's going to be within the week, set a meeting and do this, this, and this. And when we find that this is done, the results are not airy-fairy. They are more tangible. And it's also something that we have found to be really strong in terms of the ROIs, especially if the functional goals are set. Okay? Now, moving on to the second area of learning. This is the one that we're really, really familiar with, which is acquiring knowledge. And this is currently done by, like I mentioned earlier, everything on LinkedIn Learning, right? All the short videos that are there. Or if you're the type that needs to feel paper in your hands, you're going to read 10 books about business. Or if you think that, okay, just consuming this information will make me a better business person. If I read 10 books about entrepreneurialism, I will be a great entrepreneur. That's really not the right way to think about it. Or if you're even learning the wrong thing. In this day, and this is what Rafael also shared, bite size is the way to go. I think that the 20 to 25 minutes, this is just a guideline, something that is short, basically short. We also want to be able to make sure that this is something that we are not just memorizing as book knowledge, or how we sometimes have to do those pre-test and post-tests during a training course. What they are basically doing is just getting you to regurgitate the information. So that's not something that we want to do. We want to be able to reflect, internalize. And how this is sometimes done is through what they call rest and return. So key point here being rest and then returning to it. Not just saying, I've done the 20 minutes and therefore I'm done. I don't know if it's happened to you, but sometimes you get all these like eureka moments when you're not doing anything that's related to the learning. So you're doing something, you're learning something new, and maybe you have to go take a shower, and in the shower, something comes to you. Those kind of eureka moments. What usually happens to me is when I'm almost about to fall asleep, those are the times that it comes to me. And therefore, I have a notebook at the side of my bed to write down whatever has triggered my thinking. Learning experts call this the diffuse kind of learning versus a focused learning, which is sitting in front of your screen, doing online learning, reading a book, along those lines. So these are practices that will help accelerate your learning. Now, the last one, and I think this is the secret sauce that is not so secret that is important in acceleration of learning. Deliberate practice by putting knowledge into action. What do we mean? Traditionally, after you attend a course, the responsibility is left to the learner or the participant to put things into practice. And for you guys who have attended programs like this, what happens after a session? You go back, whatever files that you have or notes, it just is left there. And after a week, it's not there anymore because it's gone to the bottom of the pile, right? So waiting for opportunities to apply is not going to work. Or you practice mindlessly. An example of this would be if you go work out and your instructor, your PT instructor or coach will tell you while you're doing this really weird plank movement or burpee or whatever, the instruction to you is to think about your core, engage your core. And if it's something that is working in the fitness industry, it's also something that we have to do deliberately. Don't practice mindlessly. Or you might be perfecting the wrong things. An example that I can give you is that yesterday I was having a one-on-one conversation with one of our learners. And the feedback that was given was that you have to, manage your time better. You have to learn how to prioritize. And therefore, the learning was about tools and framework, about managing priorities. However, as we had that coaching conversation, what we found was that the scheduling or the making sure that you set enough time for certain things wasn't really the issue. The concern or the obstacle was really about a competency that didn't allow him to do the work in half an hour and took him 3 hours to do. So perfecting the wrong thing is also a pitfall that we should try and avoid. What should we do? Here's what we should do. Number one, make sure that you identify or create an opportunity to be able to practice it. So don't leave it to chance, because if you leave it to chance, then it's not accelerated learning. Then this is the old school way of learning where you learn something and then you wait for when in the future an opportunity comes up and then you start applying it. So that will take you, 10 years to learn. But if you are a kind of person who wants to accelerate your learning, you create the opportunities to practice it. And this is really what we currently do with a lot of our clients, especially right now when we're doing the blended kind of learning where, you know how everybody says, and I saw a few comments about online learning. It's not everybody's cup of tea, right? But it's necessary. And our approach to it is that it must be fit for purpose. So let's say, for example, you do an online session and it's short. After that, what? You're not sure whether the person is engaged. You're not sure whether he left to have some coffee. Was he even listening? There was no answers, whatever. Now, what we do is we consciously, together with our clients, create an opportunity where they have to practice this back at the workplace. And when we do this, people are then focused on the correct achievement. So the achievement is not, I attended a training program. The achievement is, what did I do with that information and in what scenario? Also very, very important is the ability to get feedback, immediate feedback if possible, and then reflect on that, and then realize that, I tried this, it worked 50%, 60%, some adjustments I have to make, go ahead and do that. Now, this is what we call, in a nutshell, our philosophy to accelerated learning, not leaving it to chance. Number one, setting functional goals, having acquired the knowledge, and then deliberately practice it. Maybe you're thinking, so Emily, net, how fast is fast? You say accelerated learning, how fast is fast? The short answer is it will be as fast as you are willing to put the effort to do these three things. Okay? I have a colleague and she's learning Korean right now. Okay? Let's say she's learning Korean for fun. Compared to another person who is learning Korean because I want to have a full-fledged dinner conversation with insert hot Korean actor here. With different goals, you will obviously put in different amounts of time or different amounts of effort. The person who wants to learn for fun is going to take a really longer time. The person who wants to make a good impression with this hot Korean actor is going to take a lot shorter time, right? And it's interesting because Digi has this 40 hours. We also have a lot of authors out there, people who study the brain and study learning. You might have come across this guy called Josh Kaufman, and he says, actually, you need 20 hours only to learn and practice deliberately. My take about this 20 hours or 40 hours is that it just gives you an idea about how much time you should spend on a daily basis in order to gain that skill. So if I'm learning Korean for fun, my friend's learning Korean for fun, maybe she's going to spend 10 minutes a day, and in order to reach that 20 hours, it would take 10 times 120 minutes. Compared to, if this Korean actor is going to meet you in one month's time, this means that you're going to have to set aside 40 minutes a day in order to learn this and have a meaningful conversation with this person. So how fast really depends on how much effort you put on these three things, but make sure that all of these three things are taken care of. If you're looking for an additional pro tip in terms of intensifying and accelerating your learning even more, this is what you can do, okay? The three things: set functional goals, acquire knowledge, and deliberate practice. The pro tip is shorten the knowledge acquisition and practice cycle. By doing this, they say break down your skill into smaller chunks and then practice it, and then go back to learning another small thing, and then going to practice it, and do this in a more frequent manner. I believe this is the reason why TikTok is so popular, because it broke down the entire choreography of dance, I think maybe 3-4 minutes, into a couple of seconds. And therefore you find that suddenly we've got like pro dancers everywhere, right? You don't have to be J-Lo anymore. Anybody can do a TikTok because the skills are broken into smaller chunks. Now, the second thing is, and this is, if you're a participant, you've done a program with the Jungle People before, you would have heard us say this a million times. Do something within 24 hours. Don't wait for, when the weather is good, or when I feel like it, or, when my boss tells me. Never do that. Identify something that you can do within the first 24 hours. We call it the 24-hour magic window. And if you can do this cycle, this is something that we have found to really work in terms of accelerating your learning. We've got actually a couple more tips and strategies, and through our experience working with so many organizations, we found that there are many ways for us to do this. And therefore, the work that we do with our clients also is customizable. We make sure that we don't just, push something down their throat. Make sure that it's aligned to their culture, make sure that it's aligned to what the business wants to achieve in the future. And if we have triggered your thinking in any way along those lines of learning and development, drop me a note on the contact details here, and tell me, hi Emily, I had lunch with you on Thursday, and I'll know where you came from, and we can have further conversations about this. So over to you, Isa. Looking forward to all of the comments, questions, opinions that we're gonna have later on.
All right, that was an exciting presentation from Emily. I'm sure all of us have a few action items that we can take to start accelerating our learning. Thank you very much, Emily and Rafi, for the insightful sharing sessions. Definitely a lot of great takeaways for myself and also the audience. Okay, so a gentle reminder to our audience today to fill up your name and email in our check-in form. The link is in the description box below and also in the live chat, so that we can share additional materials from today's webinar with you and also invite you to future webinars. So we will now move on to our Q&A session with Rafi and Emily. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the live chat. We will pause for 10 seconds for you to write your questions down while we prepare for the session. For the session. Okay, so. All right, great. Okay, can we have our first question on the screen, please? Oh. Okay. Sorry, a bit of a technical difficulty there, but no worries, we're back. Okay. All right. Now on to the questions, please. Oh, okay, another one. Okay, please bear with us, just a slight technical difficulty. Okay, maybe we can have a question for Rafi first to start. Okay, we have one here from Christina Kwa. How do you measure the ROI on the engagement of employees to the online learning content? So I'm assuming, how do we measure in Digi to know if, employees get the 40 hours? Okay, hi, welcome back, Emily. All right.
Yeah, so I think that's a very relevant question. And I think just starting with the measurement in general, so with taking things online, onto tools and exploring these new learning formats, measurement becomes very much possible, and it's a lot easier. And then there can be a lot of trends and analytics that you can also look into to see how your learners actually learn, how much are they taking up, what are they learning, what are the most popular courses. So all of that becomes possible when you start exploring online learning formats. And that's something that we've been doing. For instance, we looked into last year we did an analysis on how the trends look like for 2018 as a whole, and we found some pretty interesting insights. Right, I mean, just one that I remember is that Digizens learn the most in the afternoon on Thursdays, for instance. So that's just an insight. I mean, very,
Wow.
very random out of context, but I mean, you can get into that level of detail. So yes, measurement becomes possible. As far as ROI goes, that what are employees or Digizens gaining, or DG itself gaining out of it? I think that wouldn't follow a conventional measure. So we're not translating into how much our investment in learning is translating into our EBITDA growth or profit. So there isn't a direct link in all of that. Our measurement on that is a little bit more qualitative. Are employees able to take on different roles, try on different things more than they used to before? That's one measure. And if they are able to, then that's success in a way, because then the investment in time that they're putting in for learning is paying off. So that's one way of doing things. Then similarly, at the company level, are we able to close competence gaps, talent gaps, a bit better than how we used to before? That's another measure. So that level of measurement is there, certainly, and has become a lot easier with all of the analytics that are now possible with online learning. And to be honest, there's still a lot more that we can do with it.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Rafi. Okay. Emily, do you want to add anything to this question as well?
Yeah, certainly. So there are the data and information out there that you can capture how long they spend on the video, or what is the best time that they are into the learning that's online. But what we also do is, when we have online learning right now with our clients, we create opportunities where we check in with them again about how they've applied this particular knowledge and information. I think that's the maybe more qualitative side of it, to complement whatever data that we're also getting as well. Because how do you know whether or not they're engaged, right? You can't force them to turn on their video. It's a little bit awkward to wait for everybody to respond. You can't go one round and make sure that everybody speaks. But what is really important is not just that, but during our online sessions, what we do is we engage them not only by having interaction, but making sure that we trigger their thinking, and then create opportunities after the online sessions to be able to capture and say, okay, have very specific set of questions, templates, frameworks to help them reflect on their learning, show us what they've done. And then I think those are also very meaningful information that we can get to ensure that they are actually paying attention, or in your words, engage online. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Emily. All right, now can we have the next question on the screen, please? Okay. Oh, where did the question go? Okay, Shwet Yan Tan. Many SMEs are facing lots of resistance in changing the culture. Can you share some practical and real examples to work against the resistance? Okay, Emily, perhaps you would like to take this?
Yep, certainly. So when we have SME clients, or any clients for that matter, and want to do this thing called culture change, right? What we help our clients to do is to break it down a little bit into something that's more specific for different levels as well. Because most people think that change is snap of the finger. I say change, therefore everybody change. Or you have a culture integration process, and 7 different entities are coming together as one, and you say, okay, you do like a town hall or a launch, and you say, culture must change. And then we expect things to change. However, as we worked with our clients, we realized that it's got to be a top-down approach, because then you set the stage correctly, identify different communication areas that you have to cascade this down to. There are also elements of role modeling that comes into play, that in Malaysia, we say you have to cakap serupa bikin. You can't just say you want to change culture and then in your processes maintain the same ways of doing things. And the other thing that we also have realized is that this takes stamina from the leadership team, that we have to make sure that we focus enough time on the different stages in the change, and being able to sell the reasons why we should change. And therefore, Checkin, as we take our clients through this, it's usually not a very fun journey. Like, it's not launches with confetti cannons and balloons and things like that. It's really going into the detail of how things have to be operationalized. And yeah, it does take a bit of time to do that.
Oh, all right, great. Okay, how about Rafi? In terms of like DG, we're a large corporate. Was there any resistance when the idea was first introduced to start digitalizing learning?
Yes, naturally. So it's a radical change in some ways, and as Emily mentioned, there is a change management process through it, and it takes time. And as I was also sharing, it's been a transformation that has taken years for DG as well, and then there's still a few bit more to cover. But I think just reflecting on the experience at DG, right? As Emily pointed out, right, the commitment from the leadership is absolutely essential, because that is what drives expectations and the sentiment in the organization. If that's not there, then all the efforts lower down the organization, they just fall apart. So that's essential. Secondly, the interesting thing for us was that you get the initial momentum really quickly. That's from your early adopters. They will just jump on it, and you don't really need to make a lot of effort to bring them on. And then also the late adopters will those are also not an issue, because when the rest of the organization is on it, those the remaining 20-30% will just feel the peer pressure and will understand that it's a norm, and then they'll just jump on it as well. It's the middle segment which takes the most effort, and that's where a lot on leadership commitment, a lot of stamina from leaders, a lot of communication, a lot of engagement that has to come in to play a role.
All right, great. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, we have one from Xiao Wei Chin. What has been some of the proven steps in encouraging employees to learn beyond their roles, especially if it's something new that we want to introduce in the company? All right, Rafi, would you like to take this first?
Yeah, so I think if it's something which the company intends to introduce, if it's a project, a new area that the company is exploring, a new domain, then it just becomes that much more logical and easier to encourage employees, because they will understand that this is coming. This is a new area that's coming up, and we just clearly see opportunities in there. So it makes sense to learn on those areas. So it's just about building the right story around it, and then it goes back to business, right? If it's a new product or a new domain that the business is venturing in, making employees understand why we're doing that, how it links with the company's strategy, how it links in with the company's business plan. And as long as you're able to make employees understand that, they would want to be part of that journey. They would want to be a part of the company's success. They would want to be part of contributing or making an impact in the company's success. So there will be that general desire to take that up, and that's something that we've seen in DG as well. So yeah, I think creating that need from a business perspective is one way, one proven step of doing this.
Okay, great. All right, Emily, would you like to add on to this, or should we move to the next question?
Actually, just a very short one. I totally agree. We have a client right now who's already heavy underway with robotic process automation and AI and things like that. So what we help them to do is to realize that if you don't grow, all these manual routine jobs are going to be taken over. And if you still want to be relevant, you'll have to do it. So it's about creating that reason for change, I suppose, as well as putting in steps so that people can find themselves, the opportunity to learn is there. I just have to want it and make sure that I don't become obsolete. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, great. Thank you. Okay, so we can move on to the next question. Okay, Idris A asks, in the age of social distancing, how do we cater for people who don't do well with online learning without resorting to classroom learning? Oh, very interesting question. Emily, would you like to take this?
Yeah, so no one said that online learning had to be one specific way of doing things, right? So we do have a lot of webinars and things like this where people can tune into and learn. But I think it's about making sure that it's also interactive And when you create opportunities for interaction, there is very little that the person can do other than respond, give you feedback. So there are many ways to do this. However, like I also mentioned earlier, we do a blended sort of it. So right now we are having one face-to-face session actually that's going on, that's being run right now. So it's coming back already, of course, with physical distancing SOPs there. But I think fit for purpose is what we go for in the Jungle People. So if you have to download something or share knowledge in an online learning manner, nothing's stopping us from having peer conversations after that. Can we also follow up with a call? Can we do something with their supervisors? So different ways of engaging to supplement online learning. Yeah.
Okay, great. Rafi, would you like to add anything to this?
I think I totally agree with Emily. And the only thing to add is that we need to just remember that learning goes beyond just courses and classroom or online training or learning. It's also on the job. It's also what we read. It's also what we do on the job. How do we do it differently? So we just need to keep that in mind, that we're also learning through those means. And in many ways, you learn on the job a lot more than you would through a course. So there's plenty of ways to make it relevant for everyone.
All right, great. Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. So can we have the second last question, please, on the screen? Okay, David Tan, how has Digi benefited from encouraging employees learning? Okay, Rafi, would you like to take this? Yeah.
Yeah. So for Digi, it comes down to the nature of the business and how certain skills have now become a lot more important than they were in the past, and these skills will become even more important in the future, and there will be additional skills that come in as well. We're talking about cybersecurity, advanced analytics, we're talking about automation, and so many others. So of course, the direct benefit is that if we can get employees to learn on those skills, that's directly contributing to our competence needs. How does an organization acquire competence? The organization can acquire it from outside. We can hire people from outside, or we can develop it internally. So while we keep a balance of both, the internal development is something which we've seen or we've gained a lot of ground on by employees taking that up. In some cases, employees totally reskilling themselves, learning new skills, and in some cases, they have the skills but just increasing their proficiency levels by taking up learning. So that's a benefit that we've seen directly.
Okay, thanks a lot, Rafi. Okay, let's move on to one final question from the virtual floor before we close. Okay, another one from Shut Yan Tan. Hey, Emily, like your interaction here. How can we apply new learning when things we've learned might not be related to what we do at work? How to accelerate with this deliberate practice at work?
Okay, so a lot of our participants, they are asked to attend leadership courses, right? Because we say, yeah, it doesn't mean a position or a title on your business card. Everybody should be self-authorized to lead, etc., etc. And then we have this young 20-year-old something and say, but I'm not a leader in my workplace. How do I lead, right? That's going to be 5 years down the road, 3 years down the road. So what we do is we get them to do outside of work sessions in their like societies or CSR related activities, pick up leadership positions. So I guess if you want to, you will always be able to find a way to practice it, even if you're not formally using it in a leadership position. Or let's say you attend a session that talks about presentation skills and public speaking, and then you go like, but I'm not going to be on a stage anytime soon. I have no way to practice this, right? And there are things that you can do. You I don't know, go live on Facebook, share a topic, or in your small team huddles, volunteer to, lead a session. So if you want to do it, there are always opportunities to do it, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Emily. All right, so before we end, I'd like to invite both Emily and Rafi to just give a few last words before we end the session. We'll start with Rafi and then to Emily.
Yeah, so I think we've first of all, thanks a lot, Isa, once again for this opportunity, and it's been great sharing and also listening from Emily and all the Q&As. So I think takeaways being that learning is for everyone. It's something that's here to stay, and we need to keep up to speed to it. And there are many ways of doing it now. And that's a good thing because we can tailor it to our needs. So one thing that I took away from what Emily was mentioning, the 24-hour magic window. So that's a note that I've taken myself. Some things that I'm putting away for the weekend, I'll do those tonight. So I think that's really, really good advice on not delaying things and applying deliberate learning as soon as possible. So yeah, wish all the viewers all the best with their learning journeys. Spend some time reflecting and then applying.
Okay, thank you. Emily?
Yeah, so I think it's been really exciting to be in this time where we exist in this world right now. In the past, when we had to go and look for information, you would probably have to take a bus, go to a library, look for a certain book. But we're in a day and age where I think we have no reason to not learn, right? Because it's so readily available out there. But I also think that other than acquiring the knowledge, it's also got to be deliberately applied to something that is functional so that I can do it immediately instead of packaging it nicely and then keeping it in your mental pocket and say, I'm going to leave it for a rainy day. So that's not going to accelerate your learning. But if you can do these three things, I think we'll see great things. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much to Rafe and also Emily. All right, so before we end, just a quick reminder for you to fill up the link in the description box so that we can include you in the next webinar and also send you the invites. Okay, if you have any more questions, feel free to email us at hello@althr.my. So I will share the link and everything in my next slide as well. Okay, so give me a moment. All right, okay, so there you go. Feel free to email us and also visit our website, www.althr.my. Together, altHR and DGX, we would like to announce that we are currently offering altHR, the super app for companies that we have built for free until 31st December 2020. So now is the best time to grab our altHR app and sign up. So you can do that on our website. Thanks again for joining us until the end. We hope you stay safe and see you again soon for our next webinar. Thank you and bye.